Ladies and gentlemen, this is our Budget and Finance meeting. Our chairman is having a good time, let's hope, this week, and so Vice Chair will if you'll mark here if we ever see her on this when it comes up to whatnot. Did anybody see anybody that we need to wait another minute or two on? Everybody all right? We'll begin with RS 2015 and 1389. This authorizes the Department of Law to compromise and settle the lawsuits brought by Pamela DeSoto against Metropolitan Government and certain Metro employees for the amount of $295,000. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved and seconded. This was one, Councilman Stein, would you like to?
Yeah, my question is, and I see Mr. Lynch here, and I think the chief is here too. It's not so much about the settlement itself, but it seems to me that in just reading your analysis and what little conversation there's been, that it doesn't seem, looking from the outside, that the sort of lines of authority about between parks and the police department over the oversight of all this and sort of the communication seems to be or was hazy. And I'm just sort of curious as if the principals involved in the two departments, or maybe Tommy can do it all, could help us understand exactly how it all works between the police department and the parks department in general terms, not specifically about this settlement.
Who would you like to hear from first?
Oh, how about lucky Mr. Lynch?
Mr. Lynch, you're recognized, sir. And see if the mic's on.
Hello.
Which one's the mic? That one? Try it now. Now.
Does that work?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Stein, are you referring to the MOU that we presently have with the police department?
I am. I mean, it appears in reading the analysis of the settlement that there was at least some communication that seems hazy in reading an analysis. And I assume you've seen the analysis that we're looking at. And so I'm just curious if, for those of us who are looking at this from the outside, you might explain to us how it works. Captain Taylor works for the police department, but obviously they're patrolling parks where you are.
Yes, and that's exactly how it works. The MOU has a captain in the police department assigned to oversee the park police that works for the parks department. And in that MOU, there may be some issues that do need to be addressed moving forward. And I think as we went through the decommissioning process and the disciplinary hearing, et cetera, there were some things that probably could have been clarified on the front end that maybe we need to look at moving forward.
So are the employees police department employees or parks department?
Captain Taylor is a police department employee. The park police are parks department employees.
So if the system was optimal, should they be all police department personnel?
Mr. Stein, you're asking me something that is not a simple yes or no answer. There's parks departments across the city, across the country. Some have park police, some don't. Some are covered by the police department only, and some have what's called park rangers who are not armed, et cetera. So there's so many functions that are covered by the park police that the department felt in years past, the best tie-in was to have an MOU and have the supervision be provided by the police department.
Okay, it would seem to me to both you and the chief that just again, from reading from the outside, that you all ought to put your heads together and as a result of all this, fine-tune it so that some of the lines are more clear. Thank you.
Anybody else? Just one question to lead off in, since I'm asked it. Do your park rangers go through the same training or any training that the police department
They're required to go through the training, yes, sir. Okay. They are not in the safety services pay plan, and they are still a separate pay plan as park police.
Thank you. Council lady, you were on the key here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. That was my question. Do they receive exactly the same training, or is it modified? Are they post-commission certified with the weapon?
They have commissions, they go through the same training, but they are assigned specifically to park functions inside the parks. The intent of the MOU and the supervision was to give better supervision, a close relationship with Metro Police, so that the communication when something happened was seamless. And from that aspect, it's been an improvement over the park police being out in the parks on their own, and the MOU has improved the performance inside the parks and has improved their conditions and their training.
Now, they do have jurisdiction outside of park.
But their focus is to be inside parks or on their way to and from parks.
Do you remember the radius of their extent of their post-commission that they carry? Does it extend, let's say Centennial, does it extend over to the Vanderbilt police officers? I mean,
Well, their enforcement is intended to be inside the parks, and if you see a crime or if you get called, if there is an emergency contact, they can respond to things like that.
Yeah.
But their focus is inside the parks and to go from park to park.
and they have, they go every year for in-service training.
They
as
have
Metro
training,
officers.
they're certified through the academy, and they work with the police department under the MOU for extensive, continued training.
That's good, thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Weiner.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. So I had several questions, some for Mr. Lynch and some for Mr. Solomon.
Go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so my question right now is, she's still employed, right?
Yes,
She's on the job.
yes, parks, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the $30,000 back pay is for what period?
And I don't know to the extent of the settlement, but in essence, the settlement just basically gets us to the point that there was, the difference between the back pay between what she was as a sergeant to what she went to as an officer in that time frame, and then looking at the lawyer costs, et cetera, involved in the situation.
Okay, and there's an appeal pending, Mr. Solomon, right?
Let me make this one. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you. There are several actions on many different fronts, but
Right.
yes, there's an appeal on the particular employment action that was taken in front of the Civil Service Commission and an administrative law judge. Yes, there's also federal lawsuits, state lawsuits, et cetera.
What is Metro's exposure if we approve this settlement? Does it all go away?
Yes,
Every one of them?
yes.
Okay. Last question that I have, is there, and this is probably generalized, is there a systemic policy in place across metros, all departments, that we have a policy in how we handle reprimands, employee issues, whether there's civil service or not civil service, such that these confrontations, communications are recorded, and the employee is handed a document at the end that says, please acknowledge this conversation in writing, and do we have somebody from HR rather in attendance when that happens? Anybody can answer that question.
John, you want to try?
Yeah.
You're recognized, so I'll go right ahead, sir.
I guess the short answer is yes and no. So I think we've kind of talked about this a couple of times before. I think Councilman Claiborne in particular has been interested in this. And the question is whether do you have a uniform policy across all departments, which you can be, the good news there is you're sure of uniform, it's all happening the same way. The bad news there is that really different departments have different needs and wants and desires. And so generally speaking, each department has its own policy on how discipline should be administered and what the discipline should be to best suit the department. Now, one of the things that we've talked about with HR is, should we try to get some kind of best practices, training or some sharing of ideas going? I think that would be useful. But I think most departments, at least my experience, has been do it right. That's really been my experience. I think this one is just one where I think some of it was, as Councilman Stein said, I think there was some, Captain Taylor was operating kind of under one rules, but civil service really has a part, not police. I think that might have been part of the issue here. I think the more important issue here is that what happened off-field, if the field of battle is whether or not she was discriminated against, and off-field is everything else, I think the off-field stuff just sort of kind of overwhelmed us. We had some potential evidence destruction that was unintended, but it happened. We did have sort of a clumsy decommissioning process. And we also have an administrative law judge who will get the first crack at the facts, and we don't believe she's going to be as judicious as we'd hope she would be. So all these things put together, I think, is what caused the settlement. So somehow I went far afield from your question. I apologize.
That's okay. I guess my biggest issue and my biggest concern is the exposure of Metro taxpayers. And people are people, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what department they're in. People are people, and people make mistakes. And if we have a set of standards in place for every department that are consistent across the board, issues like this probably can't happen again.
I think it's a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Pardue, did you want to recognize, sir? Yes, sir. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lynch, the problem I got, I know that Park Patrol are assigned to the park, but going from one park to another park or to the park office, any crime they see, they're obliged to handle it just like any other police officer. Yes. I know on Dickerson Road, and I got there pretty shortly after it happened a few months ago, you had a park patrolman break up a shooting. Yes. That could have cost some lives over there. Can you tell me why they're not under public safety? And that may be a surprise to some folks around here, but do they get the same benefits under the program they're under as they do, as a policeman does under public safety?
Not from the pay rate aspect. I do believe from the heart disability, et cetera, those types of issues that are kind of unique to younger ages with police, they do get that aspect. But from the pay standpoint, they're in the SR category. And so they are kind of a different category as far as from the regular Metro Police.
Yes, sir. I understand that part of it, but if we, as a council, during the budget hearing, if we vote to give money to the police department for a pay raise overall for everybody that's a police officer, Park Patrol officers left out, is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Glover, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I want to go back and kind of pick up on part of what Council Lady Weiner was talking about. I really think that there should be some set policy, and I don't know if this body needs to help come up with that, but I certainly would like to. I'd like to see us go a little farther than maybe we are going right now to try and avoid this happening again, because I guess it could have ended up being a lot more expensive than what it has been, but even still, it's still a lot of money. So I think it's something that we need to pursue and look a little farther into.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Claiborne? Recognized, sir.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. As Mr. Solomon said, I've been asking questions in this arena for some time. And because we have settlements that go out for the various departments, and so when a person from, say, stormwater does basically the same thing that somebody does in public works, that somebody does in one of the other departments, codes, or whatever it happens to be, they always have different consequences. Some get letters in their file and it doesn't affect their work or their pay. Some get suspended. There is no consistency in how mistakes are handled. And so this conversation is certainly bringing that to the fore here. And I do think that there needs to at least be a formal discussion, whether it's headed by law or by HR or by the council, the vice mayor, whoever. There needs to be a decision made to start a formal discussion about what some of the options might be for standardizing some of this. And I understand that the departments have different focus, and there may be a need sometimes there may be mitigating factors that need to be considered, but you can still have a template for dealing with issues and have some room for flexibility within that template, I think. And I think this discussion that we're having here today is, I think that's what we're saying. And so I'm not on the committee here. I can't make any kind of motion, but I certainly hope that this just doesn't, evaporate in thin air.
You recognize Council Lady Weiner as chair of the Personnel Committee. That might be directed towards your committee.
Well, and in response to what Councilmember Claiborne just shared, I've already had this conversation with Veronica Frazier in HR, and we will move forward with that.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? Barring Councilmember Stein's request from last time, the one request that he had made is have all the papers been signed. That was kind of the major reason that we deferred this. Saul, will you, I'll get this off. Okay. Saul, that was the number one question last time.
Right. Everything has been tied up and signed, sealed, and delivered, so we're in good shape there.
Okay, we have a motion and properly seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. 11 and 0. Resolution 2015-1404 appropriates $1,996,600 from the undesignated fund balance of the general fund and fleet management fund to various departments and programs to balance their fiscal year. John, may I have a motion, please? So moved and properly seconded. John has looked to see that there is somebody from all of the departments that are affected here on this. Are there any questions by any of the members for any of the particular departments? Yes, sir. The record asks so.
It might save us time if, Mr. Ebeling, if you just sort of walk us through it generally. I suspect you're the one that knows something about everything, and that might answer a lot of questions we have just on the front end.
Sure. Happy to, Councilman. Thank you for this opportunity. Going down the list, I'm looking at John's analysis, but as we said, this is something we do on an annual basis. I should say, and John pointed out in his analysis, that there'll be a second supplemental appropriation coming sometime in April to deal with 3 enterprise agencies: the State Fair, Farmers Market, and the Municipal Auditorium. We decided to do those separate this year simply because that's the way they sort of laid out in the budget that way, and thought it'd be appropriate to do it that way. But going down the list very, very quickly, and obviously any detail in the departments are here. First is police, and that is primarily related to special event overtime. A little bit is related to overtime because of the weather, but most of it is for special events. As you know, we estimate that on an annual basis basis in the budget. We have a lot of special events, and we're going to have more special events coming up here in the spring with the opening of the ballpark, which is going to increase that, and that's an area that wasn't anticipated and budgeted. So it's simply it's a cost of our own success in terms of events, and so that's the big number for police. That is the number for police. Trial courts the courts have gone to a new domestic violence court, and there was a need for a court officer position for that court. Codes, as you can look around the city, you can see a lot of building cranes. There is a lot of building activity going on throughout the city, and codes has not received any new positions for several years. Actually have taken some reductions in recent years, and we felt that it was time and it was needed to do now rather than wait until the normal budget process because we want to keep them up on the backlog. We don't want them to get behind. We have a good reputation in terms of turning permits and applications, and we want to be able to maintain that. Studying and formulating $50,000 with the extension of the committee. There is some need to pay the consultants to complete their work, and that is an estimate for that services. Victim Resource Center was a new project we started this year. In order to complete the year, they simply are going to need some money. It's, again, a victim of their success in terms of getting advocates and getting personnel, what's the word I'm looking for? Victims to use the services. It's the need to finish the year out. District attorney is with the growth of obviously the focus on domestic violence across the city and in the courts. It piggies back down to the DA's office, and this is to provide them for staffing to properly handle the court and the other functions that domestic violence related. This is something I worked out with General Funk soon after he took office, and it was necessary to give them money to complete the year. Public Works, pretty self-explanatory. Storm weather related overtime cost, the same with OEM. And then I think that, and the major one, another major one relates to shifting money from a bond cost to a general fund cost, and that's related to salaries that were spent on the AMP project. Obviously, the AMP project is not going forward, and rather than initiative I worked out with some members of the council, rather than spending bond money and paying for those salaries long term, since the project is now on hold until the future, who knows where it's going to go, we felt it would be more appropriate to spend that out of general dollars, tax dollars, rather than to bond that and pay interest costs and over the next 20 years. I think that's the bulk of it.
Thanks. And just one additional question. I'm not sure who would address sort of the overall domestic violence work that's being done. Clearly, this was an emphasis of the last budget. My assumption is this is a continuation of that work, and I was curious if there's anybody here that could address sort of overall, is it all beginning to fit together in a way that we had hoped for? I'm asking this general question. I don't know who wanted.
Is there anyone that would like to?
Saul could probably answer that better.
Okay. Saul, you're recognized, sir.
I am the chairman of the mayor's executive committee of domestic violence. So I think the Gene Crow. Oh, is Katie Miller here? Okay, from DA's office, Katie Miller is here. But I think Assistant District Attorney Funk had asked for a couple of new positions, and I believe that's probably the bulk of what is being asked for here to handle domestic violence. But your question is more generic.
My question is, we're obviously we
Yes.
put it together, and all of this is supposed to fit together. My question is, does it seem to be fitting together in a way that the difference is being made that we had all hoped for? I know it's early, but is the system in place better now?
Probably the best statistic I've got to show that things are moving in the right direction is that of all the victims that are subpoenaed to come to General Sessions Court, 80% of them are finding their way to the JCAC and getting a whole panoply of services for women and some men. It's about 20% men of domestic violence. I think we've been very successful in reaching out to the victims, which is what we want. We think the fact they have a place to stay and they don't have to sit in court with the abuser. I think all those things are coming together. The DA and the center have worked very closely together. The DA typically will go sit in the center for a period of time in the morning to interview victims. So it seems to be working out very well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, you have anything to add? You all came all, you're here. Would you like to be recognized? Yes. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Like Mr. Solomon said, the Gene Crow Center is doing a fantastic job with providing services for victims and a safe place for them to wait until they come to court. The whole system that is in place now is such an improvement over a year ago. We now hear all domestic violence cases in 4B, which is one courtroom that hears domestic violence cases every day, all day long. And we very recently have gotten Judge Amanda McClendon to hear all of the bound-over misdemeanor domestic violence cases which seem to languish in criminal court and never reach a resolution. So all these factors in place are really improving the way that Davidson County addresses the crime of domestic violence.
Thank you. Any questions? The Honorable Councilman Bedney?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add that recently some of the council members visited the courts as were invited by them, and we visited that center. We were very impressed with it. It's really a good way for people to come forward and in a safe environment. So it was great. I just wanted to add that.
Honorable Lancaster, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable you're not Vice Mayor yet, Honorable Tendera. Floridian slip there. Mr. Solomon, you said, Rich Reebling said one court officer. Is this one additional court officer or just one court officer, period? And what about other staff for this new court? Is it in place?
Yeah, everything else was in place. It just they needed a new court officer in order to handle that court. So that was what that purpose is.
So it's going to be two court officers,
No,
three?
one court, one new one. I'm not sure. They needed one additional one to make it work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a properly seconded, and I'd like to add also, Rich, thank you for addressing the one concerning the transportation study. I believe that was a commitment that was made to Councilman Tiger concerning where those monies would be put and brought back, and we appreciate that. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. And unanimous on 1404. 1405, Office of Emergency Management approves a 7th Amendment to a state grant for reimbursement of expenses resulting from the May 10 flood by extending the term of the grant through April 29, 2020. May I have a motion, please? So moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Unanimous. 1406 approves a renewal of intergovernmental agreement between the U.S. Corps of Engineers and Metro Police Department for the use of off-duty police officers to patrol the recreation areas at Percy Priest and Old Hickory Lakes. May I have a motion, please? So moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Council lady, you're recognized, Council.
John, that's a $68,000 cap that's on that. Does that mean that's the maximum that we're paid?
That's the maximum cap under the contract. So yes, I mean, unless the budget is amended, that's how much the feds have budgeted for this service. This is a continuation of a contract that we've had for a number of years.
So we won't end up on the short end of the stick?
No, I mean, they pay the rates, they're billed at the rates that all other businesses that use the secondary employment unit pay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor of 1406, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Unanimous on 1406. 1407, this approves a state grant of $85,000 to the Metro Health Department for tobacco use prevention services. May I have a motion, please? So moved and properly seconded. Council lady, you're recognized, ma'am.
One last question. How many years have we been doing this, Mr. Sharp? May I ask him that question that I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
asked him?
You're recognized. Just identify yourself and go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Tom Sharp from the Health Department. I have no idea. It's been a while, though. This is an ongoing program. There's a second one that's a 3-year deal that started last year. This is the standard tobacco prevention unit that's been there for as long as I can know of.
Do we have outcome measures that are required for this?
Yes. We have internal key result measures that we look at.
Okay. And so there's been improvement?
Yes.
Okay. And results can be shared with us?
Sure.
Stellar. Thank you.
Would you like to see them?
I would love to.
You got it.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, please send her a copy of that, and if any other member would like to, may I ask, is this the one that started when they had the tobacco settlement?
No, sir.
Okay.
This is CDC funded.
Any other questions? All those in favor of 1407, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Unanimous on 1407. 1408 approves an intergovernmental agreement between the state and the Metro Board of Health to review the sudden deaths of children. May I have a motion, please? So moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Unanimous on 1408. 1409 approves an amendment to the agreement between Vanderbilt University and the Metro Board of Health to participate as a member site for tuberculosis consortium studies by extending the term of the agreement through September the 28th, 2015, and approves an $80,985 increase in the amount the health department is to be reimbursed. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Unanimous on 1409. 1410, Historical Commission approves an application for a state grant of $30,000 to the Metro Historical Commission, working in conjunction with the Metro Parks Department to hire a consultant to complete a master plan for Two Rivers Mansion and grounds. May I have a motion, please? So moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Council Lady Lancaster, you're recognized.
How soon are these funds dispersed to all that we are given unanimous approval to tonight? How soon, Mr. Reebling? Is it before the new budget year?
Well, as funds are expended, the money's available, so as they incur costs, they'll get reimbursement for the money.
So as soon as they get the money,
They can start spending against it once the grant's approved.
They can begin spending it?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Chair would just ask, this is matching funds as well, is that correct? So, Tim, since you're here, we'll just identify yourself. My only question was, this is matching funds as well, so we're looking at twice what is here instead of the 30, correct?
That's correct. Tim Walker with the Metro Historical Commission. The $30,000 that's matching is being put up by the Friends of Two Rivers Mansion. It's the Friends group that the Parks Department in our office created about 4 or 5 years ago.
Thank you. Any questions? This has been moved and properly seconded by Councilman Claiborne. I know he's happy with this. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Unanimous on 1410. 1411 approves an application for a state grant of $30,000 to the Metro Historical Commission, working in conjunction with the Metro Parks Department to hire a consultant to complete a master plan for the Kellytown Native American Archaeology Site. May I have a motion, please? So moved and properly seconded. Am I correct, and this is also a matching? This is a proposed. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Unanimous on 1411. 1412 authorizes Department of Law to settle a lawsuit brought by Khaleesi Sweat against the Metropolitan Government and Metro Police Officer Joe Shelton for the amount of $50,000. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Unanimous on 1412. Second reading bills. 1042 approves the renewal of a ground lease between Ecker Corporation and the Metropolitan Government for a portion of excess 25th Avenue North right-of-way located at 2416 West End Avenue. May I have a motion, please? So moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Unanimous. And my counsel next to me says that's it. May I entertain a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned. Thank y'all.
Yes, sir. No. Yeah.